Pacifica Historical Society is pleased to be one of the hosts of today's event. I'm Patricia Kramer, one of the Society's vice presidents, and I'm going to be your guide during the next few minutes as we take a quick look at the history of Pacifica's shoreline over the past 100-plus years. A Town on the Edge is an apt title for the chapter about Pacifica in Rosanna Shaw's book. We'll begin in the South. You may be surprised to learn that Shelter Cove dates back to the late 1920s. It has always had modest vacation cottages at the edge of the shoreline in front of a steep cliff. Undoubtedly, the original residents and vacationers were very aware of their vulnerability to high surf, but most of the time, the seas were calm and the fishing good. Occasional storms, such as this one in 1958, would damage and even destroy housing, but residents just rebuilt and stayed put. Their houses were modest and the amenities worth the risk. In the 1980s, road access to Shelter Cove was washed out, so residents must now use steep stairs from the Pedro Point district. The private enclave still survives, however, with much of its same appearance and lifestyle. Known by a series of names, San Pedro Beach, Lindemar Beach, Pacifica State Beach, is the largest and most gently sloping part of our city's shoreline. This photo from the early 1900s shows a beach configuration that actually looks a lot like what we have now. This appearance is in stark contrast to the cliffs in the northern part of town. This beach also has a long history of storm damage, as this photo from the early 1900s shows. But these modest sheds, used for farming, would have been pretty straightforward to replace. Only a few houses and businesses were ever built on the ocean side of the highway. Those nearer the water were and are well aware of their tenuous existence. One of the houses removed in 2003 originally belonged to Pacifica's first mayor, Gene Fassler. Intermittently, the family would have to evacuate when there was threatening surf. Another structure on the beach at the same time, out of view to the north, was the Wander Inn Bar. Its informal motto was, "Wander in, stagger out." Moving north to Rockaway Beach, this photo from the 1930s shows the outline of the beach with dunes just inland. This aerial shot of Rockaway from 1950s shows an increased commercial development, including a parking lot in front of Nick's. Rockaway Beach is also no stranger to periodic storm damage, as shown in this photo from 1958. The original Breakers Cafe was a bar-restaurant situated where the Moonraker is now. In response to such storms, riprap now armors the shoreline west of the business district, and it's obvious there is no longer a beach there. The beach on the southern side of the cove has eroded inland, but is still a beach. In 1905, the southern section of Sharp Park was known as Salada Beach. You can see here where the Ocean Shore Railroad is being built. The prominent saltwater lagoon known as Laguna Salada was open to the sea near its north end and probably provided some natural flood control seasonally. This 1928 photo of the Salada Beach area shows sand dunes near the shoreline north of Paloma Avenue. Note the many automobiles parked near the beach, most likely on the raised ledge. This is the beach in the southern part of Sharp Park before the golf course was built and opened in 1932. The darkened area is likely vegetation. In 1941, 4 holes were relocated to the eastern side of the highway. Although the original holes nearest to the ocean were not actually flooded from the sea, an unreinforced earthen levee was built at that time between the golf course and the ocean, a precursor of the levee we have now. Sharp Park was still only sparsely developed in 1951. Notice in this photo the transition from sandy beach with a natural berm on the south side to a cleared lip north of the airplane wing. This shoreline feature grows higher further north, developing as high cliffs in Pacific manner. This aerial photo from 1955 shows Beach Boulevard as a very narrow road right next to the drop to the beach. Some of the houses from this photo are still there, making possible comparisons of the shoreline from 70 years ago with today's engineered beach wall and promenade that extends to the west. Flooding is nothing new in West Sharp Park either. This 1956 photo shows the corner of Clarendon and Palmetto, a similar condition to what we saw earlier this winter. In the early 1970s, the pier was built to accompany the new sewer treatment plant, and the shoreline was lined with riprap for relatively short distance, both north and south of the pier. Continued erosion of Beach Boulevard is evident in this 1975 photo north of the pier. Then the world changed to color. After severe storm damage in the early 1980s, additional riprap was placed along the shoreline and sea walls with promenades constructed both north and south of the pier. There's essentially no beach now north of the pier. These next 2 photos show erosion along the shore for the most northern part of Sharp Park. Riprap has been placed by property owners along Shoreview Avenue and the Pacific Skies mobile homes. Cliff erosion is dramatic here in North Sharp Park, but it is just north in Pacific Manor that the loss of houses and apartments along Esplanade made national news. When houses in Pacific Manor were built in 1948, houses on the bluff west of Esplanade were thought to have ample backyards. But 50 years later, the yards were gone. And eventually, the houses were demolished. A little further north, it was a similar story for the apartment houses. Note the hopeful but ineffective riprap at the toe of the bluffs. This is the end of our brief tour through space and time. I hope this presentation has helped you see how our coastline has changed over the last 100+ years. Being a, quote, town on the edge is certainly not new for our area, but the consequences are certainly greater with more development. Periodic strong surf and eroding cliffs in Pacifica are a hallmark for us, expected to become even greater with the challenges of the future. Knowing more about our history will hopefully help us plan better. Thank you.